All right, welcome to the Entrepreneur Master Series with me, the real Jason Duncan. And I've got some interesting news to share with you as we get started today. So I was just listening to a podcast. I think it was yesterday. I don't know where I was listening to this actually. It might not have been on a podcast, but I listen to a lot of books and podcasts. And one of the things that they said is that I think it's like 79% of people have a dopamine rush when a meeting is canceled because they all of a sudden have this time back that they didn't expect. And so we have all this time. Well, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to go forward with Entrepreneur Master Series. We can't get Brett connected in, and this tax thing is all him. I would be there just to ask questions and to help facilitate the discussion. But if we can't get him in live, and that's the problem with doing things. Oh, Brett's here. So don't leave.
Guys, I'm here, guys. I'm so sorry. My time was crazy, and I lost track. I'm so sorry. I was on call another call.
Oh, well, we're here now, Brett. I was just explaining to them what kind of dopamine rush we get when meetings are canceled. And I was just about to give everybody this great big dopamine rush because the meeting was going to be canceled.
Yes, I'm ready to go, guys.
So we just did this big, huge roller coaster of emotions. Everybody's like, okay, I'm going to not get to sit in a meeting for an hour. And now I'm sitting in a meeting for hours. So Brett, welcome. We're glad that you're here. Let me, I just hit start. So let me go ahead and do an introduction for everybody. So while Brett's getting ready he's getting connected in, getting ready, let me introduce today's show. So this is the Entrepreneur Master Series. This is part of the TRJD worldwide family. So if you're interested in being part of the TRJD family, you can go to therealjasonduncan.com and read all about it. And I do live events like this on Zoom. I do live events in person. I speak across the country, and then I do coaching. I coach people through a business accelerator to help them accelerate their success. So if you're an entrepreneur and you're interested in that, becoming part of our family, go to therealjasonduncan.com and check that out. Somewhere along the lines, before we finish out today's Entrepreneur Master Series episode, I'm going to share a link in the chat window. So you need to make sure your chat window is open. And I'm going to give you all a special discount on my next business accelerator in the event that you're interested in being coached by me live through the 4 core strategies to exit without exiting. So I'll be on the lookout that. Make sure that your chat window is open. I'm going to go ahead and do that now. So just click on the chat button at the bottom. The other thing I want to encourage you to do as we go through the conversation today is make sure you click that Q&A bubble down at the bottom. So at the bottom of your Zoom screen, there's a little Q&A bubble. And in there's a place where you can ask questions. So when you type in your question, Brett and I will see that, and we'll be able to answer those questions live here on the show for you. We're doing this live on Zoom. It's also being live streamed on Facebook at The Real Jason Duncan on Facebook. So we're glad that we've got all that here. And I was ready to pull the plug. And man, Brett, I'm so glad to see your face, man.
Here it
Good
is.
to see you.
I won't let you down either. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for your patience. So sorry for being late. I'm going to dive in right now. We ready to go, Jason? We're good.
Well, let me give a formal introduction because I haven't done that yet. Let me introduce Brett. So Brett Swarts, who's here with me, he's considered one of the world's most well-rounded capital gains tax deferral experts. He's a very informative speaker, speaks all across the nation on this topic. He and I met a little over a year ago through a mutual acquaintance, and I flew out to California and I recorded one of my podcasts with the Root of All Success podcast episodes with Brett. So if you want to go to therootofallsuccess.com, you can go back and find that episode from last summer. But his audiences, what he does is he challenges them to create and develop a tax-deferred transformational exit wealth plan using something called a deferred sales trust, or DST. So he's going to tell us all about that today. And he does this so that you can create and preserve more wealth. He's the founder of Capital Gains Tax Solutions, and he's the host of the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast. And each year he equips hundreds of high net worth business professionals with the DST tool to help his high net worth clients break out of capital gains tax jail. And you can learn more about Brett at capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. I'm going to drop all of this information to the chat window. So you're going to want to monitor the chat window as we go through. Make sure you've got a pen and a piece of paper to take notes. Feel free to ask questions using the Q&A thing, and let's rock and roll, Brett. Thank you for being here, man. Oh, did we just freeze up? Is it me?
It's me. We're good?
Oh, we're good. All right, go for it.
Okay, here we go. Short little video here for everybody.
Are you telling me that you have a way to defer the tax situation there? Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And so the first one I was referring to is a 1031 exchange, which only applies to investment real estate. The second one I'm referring to is called a deferred sales trust.
A real eye opener to see that there are ways that people can use the regulatory framework, if properly structured, to invest 1031 exchange dollars in things that you would not think were like kind to what they exited from. So it was very impressive. I got to say, you are the first one I've seen pull this off, and I'm pretty hesitant to believe in a lot of these kinds of things. So it's a major feat for me to say, wow, this actually really worked, and it was really cool.
1031 is a way to shelter your income when you sell the thing. The DST is a way to avoid the 1031 and not have to suffer the time penalty.
Our career and during different tax periods, we've seen, these tax avoidance, tax minimization, offshore, all these different strategies undertaken to minimize or avoid taxes. And then I can tell you that, some of them are just not worth the trouble. And so I was skeptical. Admittedly, I was skeptical. I thought, oh yeah, here we go, another one of these, right? And then they say, no, it really is different, right? So look more closely. We looked more closely. We had, honestly, 2 years of conversations. 2 years. Now we were being due diligence at the same time that we were doing due diligence, but 2 years is a long time to be, sort of flirting with the idea of and getting to know the people and getting to really understand the transaction. Yeah, long story short, we got comfortable, although we are not tax attorneys, lawyers, or estate planning attorneys, that at least, from an investment perspective, that, it made sense to sell a highly appreciated asset, get liquid, hold that in this type of a deferred or installment sale type of instrument, and then just be in a position then to do the most important thing. I'm probably stealing your next question, which is time. They say, well, you can't make more time. You can. The deferred sales trust, in a way, allows you to lengthen the investment time horizon for those assets after getting liquid, but before having to feel the tax impact. And from an investment manager's perspective, time horizon is the most important element in investing.
All right, everybody. Thanks so much, Jason. Hopefully that's a little intro to get you pumped up with some really smart people. We're going to be talking about how you can exit really well, tax deferred, for your highly appreciated business, cryptocurrency, real estate, save a fail 1031 exchange, again, so you can create and preserve more wealth. I'm glad you're going to be recording this, Jason, and we were recording this because I'm going to move pretty quick, and Jason's going to help us out as well as we as I have some slides here. But how many of you, if you can in the chat, put me where you're from. If you're a business owner, I imagine you probably are, if you're with the real Jason Duncan. And do you have some kind of thought of potentially exiting for multiple millions of dollars in the future, right? Whether that be a real estate asset, a primary home, cryptocurrency, of course, your business that you might own and run. And I want to provide you some information today that I think is going to be life-changing and legacy-changing, because it's something that most people don't know about, and yet it's something that we focus on. And so this is called How to Unlock the Power of the Deferred Sales Trust, and it's going to say to raise capital from crypto millionaires, but it's really to exit highly appreciated assets, and it could also be raising capital for different deals that you're doing, but the focus is on capital gains tax deferral. Okay, deferral. And so, as a legal disclaimer, I'm not a CPA nor a tax attorney, although I do work with CPAs and tax attorneys who created the structure, who are brilliant. I'm a trustee that helps to kind of be like the registered nurse to check you in before you might have surgery here. But you always want to bring in your CPA to help get an extra eyes and ears on this as well. Make sure it can be a good fit for your situation. But here we go. So anyone ever heard of a guy named Roger Bannister? Okay, this guy broke the 4-minute mile, right? And this is pretty amazing. In fact, before he broke the 4-minute mile, most people thought it was an impossible feat because your heart would explode or your lungs would collapse. And so we geek out with tax here, and and we're going to compare this to what happened with Roger Bannister. Well, Roger Bannister finally broke the 4-minute mile, and he did it on a day over, I think it was in Oxford, England. And then just 46 days later, and this is for hundreds of years, maybe thousands of years, no one thought you could break the 4-minute mile. Somebody else did it as well, John Landy, and that was pretty cool. Well, we did that with our first cryptocurrency exit on August 7th, 2021. The deferred sales trust goes back 26 years, thousands of closes, billions under management. It's always worked for businesses in real estate, stock, primary homes, saving failed 1031 exchanges. But for the first time, it worked for cryptocurrency, which was awesome because in one day and 1 hour, 5 million was exited from a Bitcoin client of ours out of the Bay Area. And about $1.85 million of tax was deferred without using a 1031 exchange, which we'll talk about here more in a minute. And this is part of how I help my client Peter finally achieve relief in retirement. And for you, your relief in retirement might be exiting your business, right? It may be spending time with your family. It may be starting a new business venture, separating for some partnerships. We can help separate some partnerships. It might be exiting that cryptocurrency or that real estate, something where you want some kind of freedom on the other side, and you can see that freedom. But that chasm that's between you and that freedom is that tax, right? And so for my client Peter, that chasm was about overall he ended up exiting about 7.5 million, and about 2.4 million was the chasm that he was facing. And so some crazy facts that are going on, and this applies to cryptocurrency owners, about $3 trillion worldwide. But more than that, like as business owners, there's over 32 trillion that's with baby boomers, and that's with primary homes, investment real estate, and also private equity, which is businesses. And that's 32 trillion that's going to pass in the next 20 years. And this is according to like multiple studies that have been done. There's about 77 million baby boomers in the U.S. alone starting to retire every day, about 10,000 of them turning 65. And the 1031 exchange, by the way, that's just a way to defer capital gains tax on investment real estate, doesn't apply for businesses anymore. It doesn't apply for cryptocurrency or primary homes or public or private stock. It doesn't apply for artwork or collectibles, where the deferred sales trust does, which is pretty awesome. And so you might feel like this, or you might have clients that feel like this. They're reluctant to sell because of the capital gains tax. And what is that? Well, it's somewhere between 30 and 50% of your gain, okay, or their gain. So every single day, high net worth, cryptocurrency, primary home, business owners, stock and investment real estate owners, they pay hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars in capital gains tax when they don't have to. And they feel trapped, okay? And so who is this presentation for? Well, it's for anyone who has a business or real estate or crypto or public or private stock, captive insurance, carried interest, artwork, GP or LP interest, wanting to sell or save a failed 1031 exchange. And here's the key: 1 million net proceeds, $1 million gain. It's got to be big enough. It's got to be big enough gain to have enough pain of a tax to use our services, okay? So what is a deferred sales trust? Well, first thing, it's not a 1031 exchange. It's also not a Delaware statutory trust. These things get confused all the time. They're both DSTs. A deferred sales trust is just an installment sale. And Jason may have talked to you about these in the past, where you can carry paper for a business owner who wants to buy your business, and you can defer that tax slowly. But we like to say we're like an installment sale on steroids, meaning we get to have a lot of the benefits, or all of the benefits really, and none of really the downsides. And we can have this thing go for as long as you want. Okay. Now there might be situations where you still do a traditional installment sale, but most of the time, once people figure out this, they're like, this is the Netflix installment sale versus the old Blockbuster installment sale. See, the old Blockbuster one, you're tied to that single buyer, and they may or may not take care of your business or your asset, and you may need to foreclose on them and take it back, which is maybe the reason you sold it in the first place, was to retire, but now you're back in it all over again. And so that anxiety we like to free people from and say, you no longer have to finance the buyer. Ask the buyer to come with all the cash, but still defer the tax, but invest in all kinds of different things. Like what? Well, you can diversify into stocks, bonds, mutual funds, real estate, other business ventures, cryptocurrency. You can put it into anything that's basically business or investment purpose. So it could be investment, real estate, ground up development. It can also save a failed 1031 exchange. But we could do this at any time. Like, Jason, do you remember going to Blockbuster on a Friday night and your wife said, Jason, go get that movie. And you're like, I'm going to get that movie. And you see it at the end of the aisle. It's behind that cardboard box, Jason. Was there ever a time when you had to get there and like they it was gone. Like the guy before you just grabbed it right before you got it.
Yep. Right there at the last minute, or the box is there and there's no DVD or VHS tape behind it.
Even worse, right? You're just crushed, right? But what if you got that movie? What happened if you didn't return it in 3 days?
Oh, you got penalized.
What if you didn't rewind it?
Oh, you got penalized for that too. You weren't being kind. Remember, we're supposed to please be kind and rewind. Remember that?
Yes. And what if you actually got the movie, you got home, you put it in, but it was the wrong movie? Ever have that one happen?
A couple of times, and that is the worst.
They rip your heart out, right? Well, see, so the traditional installment sales can be like that, right? You think you're going to have this buyer who's going to take care of your business or your baby. They're going to do the things they said they were going to do. And all of a sudden you're like, I didn't bargain for this. I'm tied to this person. He's not paying me on time. He's renegotiating the deal now. All of this other stuff that gets all the baggage. But what if you could just have Netflix, right? Optimal timing. You can invest into different things at different times and not have to suffer the consequences of the tax. And this is what the Deferred Sales Trust does. And so as a quick background, I know Jason shared it, but I started out in real estate with my family growing up in the Bay Area. Then I went to a company and started working at a company called Marcus & Millichap, and they help people buy and sell investment real estate. And I'm still a multifamily broker, and I've closed a bunch of transactions. And I got featured on all this media, including Jason's stuff, which is pretty cool. One of my favorite guys is the guy named Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank, actually coming out with a book, and Kevin's going to be in the book, which is pretty cool. All that being said, it wasn't always that way, guys. I wasn't the smart guy in the room, like with Leonardo DiCaprio, just making cold calls, closing people. Like I was one of the guys in the back, like scratching my head, like, what in the world? How am I making the business? In fact, I want to take you back to 2006. And 2006 was the time when things were going pretty good, but I was still the new guy. Like, how am I going to make this thing? I was a 100% commission job at Marcus & Millichap making cold calls, and there's no salary, no benefits. And I'm newly married. My baby's on the way, and I'm all excited to be kind of the hero dad and be able to provide for the family. My wife wanted to stay home full time. We're all excited. We're going for it. But we're running out of money. You ever been in that situation where you're not sure if you're going to make it, and you're getting into debt, and you got a little bit of student loans, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's time to really grow up here. And now I'm on my own. And all of a sudden, the 2008 crash hit, right? And I went from like making a little bit of money to like nothing overnight. And I remember sitting in my mentor's office, just like bawling. Like I don't cry. And all of a sudden I just uncontrollably crying. And I'm like, all this flashback of all these of my childhood. My parents were divorced when I was young, and they had a lot of wealth in the Bay Area. Then my mom had no wealth. I lived with my mom. My dad didn't really give, let's say, the child support he could have or should have. And I went from this situation where I could feel like this pressure of the finances on my shoulders, and like this stress of not being able to provide for my wife and our daughter soon to be at home. And I was just feeling like a failure. And it was so frustrating because I loved something so much, which was investment real estate brokerage. It was, you can kind of have your own business owner, or you work for a brokerage, and you kind of can control your destiny and all of those entrepreneur type of things. But for the first time, I really felt like a failure, and I wasn't sure how I was going to make it. But how many of you have been on your back, and when you're on your back, you get back up and you learn something new that changes things for the future? And that's exactly what happened. So I did what every good, let's say, entrepreneur wannabe does, real estate wannabe does, and you get a side hustle. Anyone get side hustles when you're building your business, or maybe you're in one right now? Well, I got my side hustle at a place called Cheesecake Factory. Anyone ever been there? Jason, you been there? What's your favorite cheesecake?
Anything with chocolate in it, I'm good with it.
There it is. There it is. Yep. They got the tuxedo cheesecake. I learned all the cheesecakes. I sat down with the guy for the interview, and he's like, why am I going to hire you? You're just going to leave here in 3 months when you close a $50,000 commission deal. I'm like, look, I will not leave. He goes, you give me 2 years. I go, I'll give you 2 years. No matter what happens. He goes, no matter what happens, you give me 2 years. And I said, no matter what. And so that was me. I became a server. This wasn't actually me, although the kid kind of looks like me at that age. But I'd wear the exact same tie hat at Marcus & Millichap. I would show up with my Cheesecake Factory suit on. So my days and mornings, early mornings and days, I'd cold call and negotiate with banks and talk to my clients and help them through this 2008 crash. And by night, I'd be, Clark Kent. I'd put like a little hat on, a little like glasses to try to, I wouldn't disguise myself. But I worked at Cheesecake Factory, and I did that for 2 years as a part of the way to keep food and lights on. And we also moved in with my brother in a small condo. I always share that because I was at a place where it was very tough, and so were my clients. See, my clients were going through a situation where they're multimillionaires, losing half or losing everything over a 3-year period of time. And what we kept coming back to was they didn't have a quality exit plan to give them diversification, liquidity, debt freedom. You guys, you know, Jason's in Mr. Tennessee there. He's next to the Mr. Dave Ramsey, right? Debt freedom, right? The ability to get out of debt when it's a good time to get out of debt. Now, debt could also be your friend, but it wasn't people's friends in 2008. In fact, it was their enemy. And the 1031 exchange, because of the way that it forces you to overpay for properties and take on equal or greater debt, put people in that situation. And so we analyzed what happened and we said there's got to be a better way. Just then, my manager brought in a gentleman to talk about the deferred sales trust. And that's where everything changed. It didn't change overnight, but I began to use this strategy to analyze and try to help people solve their problems. Because what I always say, Jason, is we're not in the business of selling real estate or selling whatever service we're selling or product we're selling or a tax deferral service. We're in the business of solving people's problems. And to the extent we can solve people's problems, we can get paid to do that, and we increase the value of our businesses, which leads into potentially a higher tax. And so that 2-year journey, fast forward, I learned it. I started to apply it. I started sending referrals, and I was able to retire from the Cheesecake Factory. 2 years and 1 day, by the way. I held to my commitment. Okay?
A man of his word. A man of his word.
Yep. I had to duck sometimes when I saw clients in the other room, like, oh my gosh, if they see me, there's no way they're gonna let me sell their $3 million property. But my wife and I live here in Roseville, California, in Sacramento area. And we have 5 kids, and we've been married about 13 years. Our oldest is turning about 12. And I speak and coach people how to do this all over the country, mostly from Zoom now these days. But I discovered the hard way over 10 plus years. How many of you want to learn the easy way? You can put in the chat, yes, I want to learn the easy way. Yes, I want to have an exit plan. Thank you, Jason, for helping me. If I did sell, I'm going to defer millions of tax. I want to teach you all of that right now. By the way, if you've been struggling, this is probably why. It's called the perfect storm. The perfect storm is the highly appreciated assets of all-time highs. Recently in crypto, although crypto's taken a hit here the last month and a half, but the stock market, commercial real estate, business valuations, this is insane. You also have the baby boomer generation, again, the largest wealth transfer happening. Then you have some political turmoil going on where they're looking to raise taxes. Guess what? They have 30 trillion, Jason. How are they going to pay for that? They're going to raise taxes on Jason and all the Tennessee people over there and the California people. So, by the way, how many people are out of Tennessee today, Jason?
I don't know. We've got, I only see in the attendee list right now just 2 out of the people that are here. Of course, we're live on Facebook too, live streaming, and this is going to go out on YouTube later. So a lot of Tennessee folks, I'm sure, are going to be watching this.
Or we're jealous of the Tennessee and the Florida people, the Texas, Nevada, Arizona, more tax-friendly states. But either way, it's high tax.
The other 49.
Yeah. Yeah, seriously, right? Except for New York.
Yes.
By the way, it's not your fault if you've been struggling. Your CPA doesn't know about this. Most of them are very smart, great people. They're all smart, but they're tax preparers. They're not tax exit planners. By the way, they even probably thought it was a Delaware statutory trust. Like most of them, you say, hey, you know about DST? They go, oh, yeah, I know about a Delaware. No, it's not a Delaware. By the way, remember, the 1031 doesn't work for Bitcoin, NFTs, crypto, or business owners. And so the hard way, people had to maybe use an IRA. They had to use a 1031 exchange. They had to do different things like that. So I'm going to walk you through a few deal stories, and then we're going to dive into the mechanics here, okay? So again, we talked about the Ethereum exits. So if any of you own crypto or have any friends that own crypto, it works for crypto, okay? It works for, of course, Bitcoin. We did two deals for 2 different clients, which was awesome. And then this is a sale we did out of Georgia for a client who sold a $7.6 million apartment complex and deferred about $1.1 million of tax. Here's another one on Santa Cruz Coast, a client that sold a $7.9 million beach house, Airbnb, and they deferred about $2.6 million of tax. Here's some multifamily syndicators out of Vegas and Arizona. They actually live in California, but they own the assets there. And they've done about $36 million with us so far. And then a client with a real estate. A lot of our deals are real estate, primary home. This is a deal out of Colorado we did, Sacramento. Here's a client, though. It's a business sale that I want you guys to focus on. In fact, I keep saying Tennessee because you know what? My client, Shea Pope, is from Tennessee. He's in Alabama now, but he was selling his business that he had built, and the business is worth about $9.5 million. And he's with a couple partners, and he's looking for a way to exit. He has 0 basis, and what they did was it was called logo brands, Jason. So if you ever go to like these college football games, and they have like the branding and all the things, that was them.
Yeah,
they would
very familiar
embroider
with logo brands. Yeah, good company.
Okay, cool. This is, yeah, there it is. So that he was one of the owners, right? And so he's exiting the business and he's looking at a huge tax and he wants to start a new business venture like most entrepreneurs do. We want to do one or maybe another. And he's facing this huge tax and he's going, oh my gosh, Brett, can you help me defer the tax? But more than that, can I use the funds to go launch a new business venture? I'm like, yeah, what do you want to do? He's like, I want to build 72 units in Clarksville, Tennessee. Mr. Jason Duncan, you know where Clarksville's at?
Just about 35 minutes northwest of Nashville.
There it is. Well, he is partnered with the trust and he's building 72 units. Now, he had a CPA go through this. He talked with the references. He went through it. He is a very detailed gentleman. In fact, he also brought in one of his best friends who was selling a business as well. And he did due diligence on it. And now that friend has gone on to become our client as well. So I got people in your backyard that have done this, and the funds can be diversified into different funds, which is really cool. And then he's selling these 72 units and he's going to be using the deferred sales trust again. So here it is, guys. This is the number one secret to overcome the biggest objection to a deferred sales trust. So I think I know what you guys are thinking. Jason, let me know if you're thinking this. Brett, wow, this sounds amazing, but I need my trusted advisor to say yes before I move forward. I don't understand how my CPA doesn't know about this or hasn't told me about it. I mean, I've had friends sell businesses. I've sold businesses and I've paid millions of tax. Like, what are you talking about here? Really? Is this really legal? Is this true? And I want to tell you just quick 2 deal stories to help you gain instant credibility, some confidence, even if you have no deferred sales trust or tax deferral experience. So are you ready to go, Jason?
Yes, let's do it.
All right, here it is. So you may or may not know this guy named David Young, but Jason, do you know ever heard of a guy named Bill Gross?
Yeah, heard the name. Yes.
So for those who don't know who Bill Gross is, he's kind of like a Mark Cuban of the financial advising world, kind of like a Ray Dalio. Like, these are some of the smartest guys in the world when it comes to like securities, investments, money management. Well, Bill Gross and David Young was Bill Gross's right-hand guy, and they ran a company called PIMCO. And PIMCO is one of the largest money managers in the world. And for 20 years, they ran together and they built this thing from 80 billion to 1.2 trillion with about 4 other guys too, a bunch of other people too, but they're like the leadership team. Well, they all retire, get a big payday, Jason. And then David and those 4 guys, they form a group called Anfield Capital. And 4 years ago, they get approached with the deferred sales trust. And like most people, they're saying, is this too good to be true? Is this thing legal? Is this thing, I don't know if this is legit or not, but what is this thing, right? But like, they're very smart. They're economists and they're really smart. We'll just do our due diligence on this. We'll put our legal team on it. We'll look at it. We'll talk with the clients. We'll talk with the banks. And they didn't do a 2-day due diligence, Jason, or a 2-week or a 2-month. They did a 2-year due diligence. Okay. And they looked and they flew back and met with the tax attorney and they talked with the banks and the clients and they looked at the structure and every thing you could think of. Okay. And they came through with 2 conclusions at the end of that. Number 1, that tax attorney, who I like to call the Bill Gates of the tax deferral world, he's the creator of the structure. That is the smartest person, one of the smartest person, or the smartest person. I'm not quite sure if it's the or one of that they've ever met. And number 2, they are all in. They will put their name on it. They became a part of the Deferred Sales Trust new asset allocation advisory team. And so what I always say, Jason, I don't know what you think, and maybe you can ask the audience, you can put it in the chat there. But if it's good enough for David Young and his legal team, after 2 years of due diligence, running with some of the smartest people like Bill Gross for 20 years in the world, right? And they're willing to put their name on it. Is it good enough for Jason and his legal team and Brett and his legal team and everyone else that's listening to this right now? So Jason, what do you think?
Well, that's social proof is always a help. Anytime we're trying to buy something, engage in a contract, social proof. I've got clients who've joined my mastermind or joined part of my coaching program because of other people that are in the coaching program or in the mastermind. I got people that'll come on my EMS show like you're doing today because you've done it. So yes, social proof is a huge thing.
Perfect. And so that's David Young. Thank you for that. And by the way, you can watch his entire story, The Value of the Deferred Sales Trust in Times Like This with David Young. He's been on the show multiple times. He's also going to be a part of the book, Building a Tax Deferred Exit Strategy. He's, I think, the chapter after Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank, which is pretty cool. And this is the second story. This is a guy named Cal Garvin. And Cal Garvin, look about Cal, is Cal was a financial advisor for 35 years out of Southern California. And he's looking at the deferred sales trust for the sale of his practice, his business, his financial advising business. multiple $1 million sale, huge tax in California. And for him, it was time, because he goes, hey, his wife, he's married. He goes, honey, if this deferred sales trust is true, he goes, I don't know if it's true or legal, but if it's true, it's going to save us 10 years. In other words, in order to get to after tax where we could sell and exit before tax today, I'd have to work another 10 years. But if this thing is true, that gives us back time. And time is the one thing we can't get back, right? It's the one thing that we want it with our families and everything else. And so for him, it was the freedom of time. So he says, if this deferred sales trust is that bridge over that chasm of all that tax, I can get that back. And so he goes home and goes, honey, I know when we say we got married, I would never do anything that you wouldn't say yes to. And I'll let you know, it's the same thing. I have this deferred sales trust, this stack of papers right here. And if you take this and you go to the people, and by the way, he had a secret in his pocket, by the way. She worked for the Secretary of Treasury. So she was a 20-year attorney, and she actually she's high up there. Okay. Let's just say at that point. And she can connect with people in the government, and she can look at different things. And he goes, look, honey, would you just go and just look at this thing and just access the people that you can talk with to find out if this thing's legal? Because if it's not, no problem. I'll just go back and I'll just work. I have no problem with that. But if you feel good about this and this thing is legit, I will sell my business tomorrow. We will move out of California. This guy was way ahead of everybody. He moved out of California 15 years ago. Well, that's the end of the story, but let me just keep going here. So 2 days go by. He says he's sitting at home. You've seen that show called Suits, Jason?
Heard of it. I've never seen it.
There's a guy, his name's Harvey, and the junior's name is Michael. And they all, like the scenes, they always come into the room. They have like the stack of legal papers, and they throw it on the table, and it's like the big crescendo. Well, Cal says it was like slow motion out of a movie. She comes walking in the door. He's at his home office. She has a stack of papers, and she he says it was like slow motion, but she threw it on the table. Not throw it, but she put it on the table. And she goes, she said this 2 words that changed my life forever. She said, it's legit. And he goes, Brett, that's all I needed to hear. He goes, I went on to sell the business within 90 days. That was 15 years ago. Brett, we are all in on the deferred sales trust. And I want you to know that anyone can call me and they can talk with me. In fact, Shay Pope called Cal to talk with him. And he goes, and I go, Cal, would you come on my podcast and share the story? And he's like, no, I don't like to do that kind of thing, but I'll take calls. And he goes, I'll take phone calls. He goes, but here's what I want you to tell everybody. I want you to tell them this. Okay. Do you think my wife and I, and her 20 years working for the Secretary of Treasury, she's been with the IRS sometimes fighting on different things for people that aren't doing what they should be doing, and my 35-year track record and our financial legacy and our retirement, do you think we would go into something that we didn't feel was 100% legit and true and legal? And he goes, that was 15 years ago. And it's only been better every year. And so that's Cal Garvin. So again, Jason, I ask you, you locked David Young, and now there's Cal Garvin. If it's good enough for Cal Garvin for his own business sale after 35 years in the business and his wife being a Treasury attorney, is it good enough for you and your legal team?
Absolutely. Again, social proof. If other people are doing it and they're doing it at a high level, it's just not your cousin Vinny doing it. It's really cool people and very complex businesses that are taking advantage of it. It's legit.
There it is. And so after those 2 things, I think it should become really easy, right? At least easier, right? Because of the track record, thousands of closes, billions under management. By the way, it's lifetime audit defense built into every single one of these deals. There's been over a dozen no-change IRS audits. The biggest deal was a $125 million deal. It's literally batting 1,000. Like it gets to the plate and it just keeps hitting home runs every time. But there's your CPA, and there are those out there that'll say, no, it's too good to be true. It's legal. It's legal. It's not legal. It can't work. It doesn't work. And you go, well, have you signed the NDAs? Have you talked with Brett and his team? Have you explored those concepts with them? And honestly, 9 out of 10, Jason, if they actually come and talk with us and the client encourages them enough, and we always say, bring the CPA along for the ride. Don't bring him in the rearview mirror, right? Bring him along for the ride as you're doing your due diligence. We don't charge anything unless you do the deal. But here's the key. Get with us. And 9 out of 10, they join us. And they're like, oh my gosh, you guys actually have Netflix. Yeah, wow, you guys kept it, pretty under the wraps here, because there's one law firm out of the Midwest that's doing these. They're the creators. They're the Steve Jobs sitting in his random house in Cupertino, right, building Apple Computer. That is who we have. He's like that. He's like the Steve Jobs or the Bill Gates, and he's doing this, and it's working. But we don't want it to get into the wrong hands. We don't want to give our secrets out, but it 100% works every time. Okay. So what is step 1? Well, step number 1 is you just sit down with me. You sit down with yourself. You can bring in your trusted advisors, and you can form a DST. That doesn't cost you anything at this point. Step 2 is you actually list and sell your business or your assets. You transfer them to the DST, and that's when you actually pay us. By the way, we get paid for nothing until that happens, but we will consult, walk you through, show you options of what pros and cons of your different things that you're looking at, compare it against a charitable remainder trust, compare it against Delaware statutory trust, 1031 exchanges, opportunity zones, all of that. And then step 3, map out an investment strategy based upon your risk tolerance. Funds are typically held at TD Ameritrade, Charles Schwab, with a financial advisor. We work with financial advisors across the country. Okay. In fact, we can work with some there in your hometown. Okay. And the funds go there, and then you just simply receive back a promissory note, because what you're doing is you're lending the funds to the trust. And I'll explain that here in a minute. And you'll slowly pay tax. It's kind of like putting into an IRA as you receive the funds back, but the full amount's working for you. So if you're selling a $10 million business, of which you would have paid $3 million of tax, you get the full $10 million minus a little bit of fees to work for you, versus having $7 million. And then you get to enjoy your time, your energy. You might want to give away, but you don't have to give any away. There's no charity required, but you can, it's up to you. It's your money. You can start a new business venture. You can invest. It can invest with you, all tax deferred. These are typically 10-year deferral notes, and every 10 years you can renew, you can pass it to your kids. It's typically earning 8% net of recurring fees, which is pretty good. And you can always cash out whenever you want and just pay the tax. So how does this thing work? Jason, are you ready to go?
I'm ready. I've got questions, and I wonder if other people have questions. If you have questions that are bubbling up, make sure you put them in the Q&A box. Just click the Q&A box, type your question. Brett and I will answer those questions. I know I've got questions. This is exciting.
Here we go. I'm going to actually give someone a live chance. If anyone wants to unmute themselves right now, and you can walk through your actual live deal story. Do you have a business that you're selling? If at least $1 million net proceeds, $1 million gain, if you have that, you can unmute yourself, and I'll literally do it live for you right now. Does anyone want to volunteer for that?
So the only way for them to do that is they could just raise their hand, and I'll be notified, and then I could give them the option to unmute, because they won't be able to unmute themselves.
Okay, let's give people about 10 seconds to see that, and say, if you want that, just raise your hand there. And then
Nothing yet.
Okay. Jason, do you have a business venture or deal that we can do just a live?
You know what? I have actually, the question I was going to ask you is that I'm in the process of purchasing a business that the other people could probably use this, but I don't want to screw up the deal. So they're, I know what the proceeds are. Well, I don't know what the proceeds are going to be, but they have zero gain based on the story I've heard about how they started. Zero basis, rather. And then what they're selling the company for will be more than $1 million. So essentially they could do this, because I plan on paying them essentially cash. I'm leveraging the money, but I'm paying them cash. They're going to walk away with a big chunk of money. So could they use this?
The answer is yes. And in fact, I would encourage you to use it as either it could be a good faith gesture, but it could also be a negotiation piece too, right? Because it's not just what you pay for, it's what they net, and it never affects you or your deal unless you're trying to, as a buyer, if you're trying to get them to carry back paper, right, for you, then that scenario, this could be your enemy, right? Because now they're not wanting to carry back for you, they're wanting to just defer it. But I mean, that's between you and them. But let's imagine you're not asking them to carry paper, right? You're coming in with all cash, and just hypothetically, let's just say it was 10 million. Let's say you had a bankroll of 10 million. Okay. And let's just say the tax would have been 3 million, 30%, right? $3 million. So that's what we're trying to solve for. And let's imagine they have zero debt. And so the question is, how do we solve for this 3 million? Well, step one, the assets were $10 million. Okay. If the cash buyer were to give them 10 million directly, that's called actual receipt. This 3 million is triggered, right? So we got to keep this 10 million out of their hands. So how do we do that? Well, we sell it to the trust first for 10 million. And the trust turns around and sells it for 10 million. And the cash buyer, he can have cash or get a loan, doesn't really matter. The 10 million goes into the trust, and there's a promissory note sent back to the seller. The seller gets a zero down payment, zero. But they get a promissory note, like they became the bank here, they became the lender for 10 million. So it's owed to them 10 million. at 8% compounding. So watch this, Jason. If the trust bought it and sold it for 10 million, how much gain does the trust have?
0.
You got it. So how much taxes it owe? 0.
None.
Got
Although the government's probably working something out on that.
Yeah, that would be an interesting one. You're right. So now in this scenario, if the seller hasn't received any cash, they receive 0, and the 3 million is in a deferral state. If they receive 0, how much tax is triggered today on 0?
Again, nothing.
You got it. Now the question is, well, how much is the government going to charge this for this 3 million? Well, if it's a married couple, okay, it's 5 million per person per year. There's no interest charged. So let's assume it's a married couple who sold this. And pardon my cursive here. It's a new font here. 0% is what the government's charging. So they say, yes, you do owe us this 3 million, Mr. Jason Duncan, or whoever's selling this in your married couple, but not until you dip into this $10 million principal. Okay. So watch this. What if we structured the deal, Jason, for the 10 million, which at 8% is about 800,000 a year? What if you just live off interest-only payments? Can you do that?
I think most people could, for sure.
Yeah. Isn't that cool, right? Now you'll pay tax on that 800,000 as you receive it. Ordinary income tax, you get a 1099, pretty straightforward. But most people aren't wanting to spend they're not wanting to spend all of their money right now, right? They're actually wanting to invest it where? Well, I don't know. Other stuff, right? Other investments, like an apartment complex in Clarksville, Tennessee, 72 units. Like some cryptocurrency. Like stocks, bonds, mutual funds. Like, I don't know, hard money lending. Oh, my cursive is bad with this mouse. But you get the point, right? So it's not a guarantee that we're getting this 8, but we're going to go try to get this 8. And then what? Every 10 years, you can renew it for 10 years. And then if you have some kids, your kids can step into your shoes and go to the kids. So I'm going to pause here, see if anyone has any questions. You can put them in the chat. You can also, Jason, see if you have any questions here. Is this making sense? Yeah,
put them in the Q&A bubble. If you guys got questions about this, while you're thinking about your question, Brett, I have a question to ask you while they're thinking about the questions. So in this scenario, the 10 million is earning approximately 8% interest over time, just in normal investments. You're pulling off the interest, but you're only paying normal income tax on the interest that you're pulling out. But what if you pulled more? Say, hey, I need 1.6 million this year. So you're pulling 800 in interest and then 800 out in principal. Do you pay the 30% capital gains on that?
You nailed it. Yeah. So on that extra 800 you took out, you'll pay the 30% cap gains tax because you dipped into principal in that given year.
Okay. And the other question I have is are you pulling out the actual interest, or are you borrowing against that as collateral, which would then be tax-free?
Great question. And so I like what you're thinking. However, that is a taxable event. So you can't borrow against the trust because that makes it taxable, but you can partner with the trust through a JV LLC joint venture partnership, and that keeps it tax deferred. So let's walk through that, okay? So you can put it all into like the stock market, whatever, or passive stuff. It could be this could all be passive stuff over here with partners. And if it's passive, you're just going to get the, let's say it's producing the 8% and you're getting the $800,000, you're paying ordinary income tax. That's cool. But you might want to be an owner again. Like we're all pretty entrepreneurial here, right? And so we're probably going to want to be an owner at some point. And so instead of doing it like that, let me just erase this stuff so we can see everything. Okay. You can, Jason, form an LLC of which you are 100% owner to start. Okay. And you're going to go buy this company over here for $8 million. And you think, Brett, I can buy this thing for $8 million and I can probably turn it into $20 million in about 10 years. I'm like, that sounds like a pretty good plan, Jason. You're an expert on what you do. Why don't we do that? So we got to keep 2 million liquid investment grade securities, but this other 8 million can come from the trust. Now what's going to happen there, the trust is going to put up the 8 million, which is this number to buy it all cash. It's going to ask for a 20% interest in the LLC and an 8% pref. Okay. So you buy it, you own it, you manage it, you run it all. This is when you're an active GP. Okay. You're an expert. You put up, Jason Duncan, the real Jason Duncan, put up $0. You put up 0 personally. The real DST put up $8 million. I like that. Can I take that? The real DST.
Somebody asked me today if I was going to legally change my name to the real Jason.
It's like
so
the
would be
Ohio
funny.
State University. You know, they say that. It's just so funny. You're like, really? Oh, I thought I was, yeah. Anyway, so pretty cool. So, right. So you see that? So remember, you're playing with house money over here. Remember this 3 million? Don't forget about this guy over here. So actually 3 of this 8, you would have paid in tax anyways. Or let's even say you didn't even put in 8. You just put in 3 as a down payment, and you went to a bank to give you that other 5.
So you're playing with Uncle Sam's money at this point.
And why, right? Why are they going to allow this? Well, they want Jason to start new businesses, create new jobs, create more tax revenue. Like, they're winning here. Like, people think like we're doing something. Like, why do they allow IRAs and 401ks? Well, guess where the investments for the IRAs and the 401ks go? Businesses, stock, which does what? Helps them to do more research and development, help create more jobs, expand, right? Yeah. So this is commerce right here. And guess what? You're going to pay tax on this cash flow on this business. And then you're going to exit at 20 million. What happens? The amount that the trust put in flows back to the trust, which owes you the money anyways, right? And over here, let's say let's imagine you did the no debt one. You just did all cash. There's an extra 12 million there. Well, then that's going to flow 80-20. Remember, you gave up 20% ownership here.
Right.
So it's going to flow 80% to you, 20% to here, and then over here to the trust, which guess what? You can do note number 2 for that 12, for that, I don't know what that is. It's like 9 million. Note number 2 can then flow into the DST. So it's a little bit complex, like riding a bike. Okay. We ride it every day. The goal is, Jason, do you want to pay the 3 million or do you want to defer it? And do you want to find ways to invest it and make a lot of money on it? Does that make sense?
Yeah. And so the deferral is happening as long as you choose not to dip into that principal. So if you can live off of the interest personally, then you can use the principal through the LLC that you've created as a partner in the trust. I think this is an absolute genius move. This is great.
So what investors or business owners used to have to do, right? Stay in $1 million businesses and not sell because they feel like the tax, or stay in crypto or whatever it is. They used to have to borrow against their business or borrow against crypto or different holdings and have margin calls, or suffer potentially the business valuation going down, not be able to exit when it's optimal timing. They couldn't diversify. They had to give it all away to charity, which is cool if you want to do that, but some people don't necessarily give all of it to charity, right? You can not sell a business, not sell the stuff, overpay for a 1031 property, more time, energy, toilets, trash, termites, employees, and liability, become the lender for a single buyer, right? That's the blockbuster way of doing things. Stay in debt, time, energy, stress, or just pay the tax, right? Which is not great. So it's a new way. It's a better way. So who here thinks the deferred sales trust is transformational? Mr. Jason Duncan did say that we were trying to help you deliver or have a transformational wealth exit plan. And it's a very simple plan. You're going to form the DST. You're going to transfer assign your interest to the DST. You're going to sell the business or the asset. We're going to defer the tax. We're going to fund the DST, and we're going to invest. And we're going to do that anytime, my friend. Invest at any time. No rush, no pressure, no timing restrictions. So if this sounds like you and you want to help yourself or your partners or clients escape feeling trapped by capital gains tax and be able to invest with you or be able to do more deals with you, then you can go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. You can check out our YouTube channel. You can subscribe to our podcast and YouTube channel. And that is a wrap. I'm going to open it up for questions for anybody. And I'm going to go to the chat right now. I know we probably have something in the chat. And if so, I'll answer those.
Yeah, this is your opportunity, folks. If you're here live with us on Zoom, sorry we can't answer the ones on Facebook, but if you're here live with us on Zoom, I want you to ask your question about how this might work. Put it in the Q&A, put it in the chat, or if you got a, just getting perspective that you want to drop in there, that's good. I will tell you something funny, Brett. On Facebook, I put in the comments the same thing I'm putting in the chat here, but Facebook would not allow me to put your website. Have you ever run into that? capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. They said it as against community guidelines.
I have, and I don't know if that's like mine or yours or everybody's, but at a certain point, like I feel like I got on like the naughty list or something with Instagram or Facebook, and like we email them like, hey, like I don't know, and no one ever answers us. So
that's crazy.
So I usually have to like type it out, like go to, and I put capital gains or search Google capital gains tax solutions. And I just don't put the www or the .com.
Yeah. That's what I had to do for you. Well, I think this is really interesting. I would be, so if I run this down to its logical conclusion, the minimum that this makes sense if there's $1 million gain. So if we take those numbers and divide, by 10, and we're looking at just $1 million sale, there would have been some $30,000 worth of tax, right. $30,000 worth of tax. It would be, or 300,000
on 100,000. Yeah. On $1 million, it'd be 300,000. Yeah.
Yeah. $300,000 worth of taxes that would be due that you could defer. So in other words, you could drop this $1 million into the DST and live off the 8%. So 8% of $1 million is $80,000, right? Annually. Yeah. So live off 80,000, and then you could immediately take that $1 million. Is there a minimum amount you have to leave in the DST if you go do that other business thing you were talking about?
So it's always in the DST as the big umbrella. The question is, where are the investments, right? So if it's tax deferred, it's inside of the DST, but the investments can be partnered with you into a deal or stock market. And so we got to keep 20% at least amount liquid investment grade securities there. The other 80%, it can be an active, it can go into active general partnerships with you, right? In real estate or business ventures.
So you could take in that $1 million example. So, cause that may be something that people get their head wrapped around better. So if I got $1 million in taxable gain, I put it in this DST, I've eliminated $300,000 worth of taxes immediately. Well, deferred. You deferred that almost permanently. So if you've permanently deferred that, now you have access to that $1 million to go start another business, but really you have to leave 20% in there. So you have $800,000. If I'm doing my math right, you have $800,000 to go invest in you could buy an apartment complex or, a small apartment complex, another business. You could buy, I would assume you could invest in other things like crypto and other things you've been talking about, partnering with your DST, and you're the beneficiary of the DST. So even though the DST will own 20% of that entity, you're the beneficiary of it. So you get that money. It comes back to you eventually into the DST, which you can then repurpose that money again later.
Slight adjustment, right? So you're not the beneficiary, you're the secured lender.
Okay.
If you were the beneficiary, you'd be the owner, and then you just sold it to yourself and it's taxable, right? So the third party unrelated trustee, my company, Capital Gains Tax Solutions, is the beneficiary and the owner of the trust, but our company owes you back all the money. A couple little nuances here. These trusts are single entity business trusts set up just for like you. The funds are never commingled. They're only invested in funds. They only do business with your family, right? They're always in like a secured account. So all the 24/7 access to these funds online, all that stuff, right? But if you were the owner, or if I was like your cousin, or I was your best man in your wedding, or your college roommate, like if I was too close to you, it's taxable, right? So we got to keep it third party unrelated. That's how we provide that service, right? Now the funds are all owed back to you. So although we own the trust, we owe you back the full $1 million, and it's all owed back to you plus an 8% rate of return. Does that make sense? And you could always foreclose and all these different things.
Gotcha. Okay. So semantically I was wrong, but in the spirit of it, I was correct in that you could continue to use that money for your personal benefit because it's your trust, it's yours, and you can do with it what you want. So
exactly. And then as you receive back, you'll pay some tax, right? But yeah, you can put it back into investment real estate, and it's tax deferred. So the only thing you have to just be aware of is, when do I pay the tax? When don't I pay the tax? As long as it's investment and business purpose, it's tax deferred. But if you receive it back for personal use, it's taxable. And that's just like kind of like an IRA, right? A self-directed IRA. It's very similar to that. I do want to mention estate tax though, right? So for any ultra high net worth clients that are listening to this, we can eliminate estate tax, which is different than capital gains tax. It's 40% on anything that's above 22 million in your estate married, or 12 million single. And so we call it the DST 2.0. We can move it outside of the taxable estate. Like we just did that for that client on the Colorado property. We exited 5 million outside their taxable estate. And that eliminates, and then that scenario, the beneficiaries are your children. So it's a little different strategy, Jason. It's typically held for very ultra high net worth deals or clients. But what's cool is your kids can be the beneficiaries. And then second, it passes to them estate tax free.
Wow. That's I know a lot of my people in my circles complain a whole lot about the estate tax, the setup that our government has set up with the estate tax. Just that's why so many people lose land and real estate and farms. It's because once it passes the kids, there's a tax that has to be paid, and the land's not producing enough cash flow to offset that tax burden. For those of you that watch Yellowstone,
that's exactly right.
That's exactly what's going on. You could own $1 billion worth of land, and you could pass it to your kids upon your death. But if there's not enough cash flow of that land, the state can come in and take it.
You nailed
real
it,
estate
right?
And capital gains.
Right. And so, by the way, I think this is the most remarkable thing about what we do. Out of everything I just said, what you just captured there, Jason, was brilliant. And here's why, right? You don't have to give any away to charity. You don't have to buy any life insurance. You don't have to do any gifting, right? And so in that scene, right, he has his daughter, and then he has his 2 sons, right? And they're like, I don't know, the land's worth 500 million, whatever it is. Like Kevin Costner, if he passes away and they inherit that, yeah, they get a stepped up basis on the land. The land's basis might be 20 million or whatever, right? So the stepped up basis would go to 500, but immediately they would say he is single and only 12 million. If all of it was inside of his taxable estate, would be exempt. But the other 490 million, 488 million would be taxed at 40%. Like, this is crazy. So 488 here, 40%, that's $195 million, right? So it's a forced sale within 6 months. And so what's the solution? Like, I think her name's Beth, right? And Beth's like, Dad, you got to sell, right? You got to sell while you're in your lifetime. If he sells it for 500 million right now, and then he puts it into the DST 2.0, we should call Kevin together here, me and you, Jason. And then upon death, now he did sell it to a legitimate third-party buyer, right? It's got to be that for fair market value. So he has to sell the land now, which is the whole premise of the whole show, right? He's like, I'm not selling the land ever, right? She's like, you got to sell it. And but now as the kids inherit it, it's outside the taxable estate. That $500 million is all outside the taxable estate. Okay, so that means 192 million is outside the taxable estate. Like, this is like the battle for the wealth of America for the ultra high net worth, right? Over the next 20 years, this 32 trillion that's passing, this is either have a solution or you don't. The taxes are either going to go to the government or you're going to do planning and exit planning right now. Again, without charity, without life insurance, without any gifting, it does take a legitimate exit. But yes, we can move it outside the taxable estate. By the way, one of the biggest deals, $125 million deal in San Diego, was audited on that exact thing. It was a no change, no findings audit. So we were batting 1,000 with this structure. Does that make sense?
Wow. I don't know why. I don't know why it's got to be so complicated. I don't understand why our government makes it so complicated that we have to come up with these strategies to legally, ethically, and morally avoid what they're trying to do, because that's why I think the rich keep getting richer and the poor keep getting poorer, is only because of information. It's not because anybody's doing anything wrong. It's not because we're being illegal or it's just because we don't know, which is why I'm so grateful that you came onto the show to do this, because for my listeners, for my audience, and for people in your audience that are also paying attention to this, either live now on Facebook or later on YouTube, this is the type of information that can save you and your family tree millions and millions of dollars in taxes and not only save you that money, but provide you the opportunity to do more with it. So if in that scenario, Brett, that you just ran, that $10 million sale that would have had a $3 million loss essentially to the government, that $3 million is you put into use in the future for greater impact, more businesses, more investments, more real estate. Yes, it is creating more generational wealth for the people that are doing it. But what about the impact? If I go start another business and I hire 10, 15, 20, 100 employees, I've just blessed that many more people. Where if I'd have given it to the government, I don't think I have to finish that sentence.
You nailed it, right? The government's not very good at doing certain things. Like one of the examples is like public housing, right? And so they incentivize real estate owners, for example, to get this depreciation to offset taxes. And so they can't force us to build businesses or to force us to build housing, but they can give us tax incentives to do certain things, right? And that incentivizes us to go do these things and then get some tax breaks, right? So that's they basically have a 10,000 page tax code. And by the way, we all have equal access to to these tax codes. The question is, do you have the business professionals and the brain surgeons in this? I like to say the Bill Gates of tax that are the ones that are brilliant enough to be able to apply this and have faced the IRS. That's so important, right? Like if you're looking at tax deferral strategies and the person who's providing to you hasn't had the clients go through the tax IRS audits, right? Like the DST has. And they aren't the ones that actually will defend you should you go through it. Like this law firm that are my business partners, that's exactly what they do. And this is all they do. And so, yeah, you nailed it. You nailed it, Jason.
So, and I don't know if this is the appropriate time to go into it, but what is the general rule of thumb on cost for setting these up? So I know you got to have at least $1 million gain issue, but what would be the cost to set it up?
Let's do it. Let's say it's $1 million business sale and let's imagine it had $1 million gain, right? And so you'll pay the tax attorneys on that 1.5% of the gross sales price. So it's just $15,000 at close of escrow, which is not bad, right? If you save, deferred $300 for $15, that's not bad. And that includes lifetime audit defense, super important, state or federal, no additional charge. It's like almost like an insurance policy, right? That they will defend you at no additional charge, state or federal. Okay. Now the second fees are to me as the trustee and the financial advisor. Combined, generally speaking, about 1.5 to 2%, generally speaking, depending on how and where the funds are invested. So let's imagine on the net proceeds. So if they had, if it was a $1.5 million sale and they had $500,000 of debt they paid off and $1 million hit the account, then it would be about $15,000 to $20,000 per year on their recurring fee. Okay, on their recurring fee approximately. Now our goal is to net you $80,000 every year net of the recurring fee. So our goal is to try to earn about 10, Jason, not a guarantee, not a promise, but over a 10-year track record, okay, we've been able to do that, okay? Each year is going to be a little bit different, but that's the goal. Does that make sense? That's why we have those minimums. That's why we found as long as you have $1 million and $1 million net proceeds, $1 million gain, these fees are just an investment, not an expense to you because there's so much to defer. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So thank you. What are the questions that you typically get at this stage after a first flyover of this? What are people asking?
Yeah, the biggest one is the one we kind of went through. Like, I just can't believe my CPA hasn't heard about it. And a lot of people get emotionally, it's tough because they're selling their 10 or 20, 30, $100 million business. And the people that help them get there, Jason, aren't necessarily the people to help them to go to $1 billion or to even have this exit plan. Like it's just the nature of the industry and that there's certain experts in different niches. And so just being open-minded enough to say, just because they helped you get to 0 to $1 billion or whatever, even the billionaire, like I met a billionaire. I know a billionaire, and I was with him again the other day, and I was asking him about this, and his response was, I'll talk to my team. In fact, I met him in Dallas, and he's like, let me talk to my team about it. I'm really interested. We're going through some estate tax stuff right now. I was like, okay, cool. I was excited, and I was like, hey, I'd love to present to you guys. Give me a chance to present, And he's like, let me just talk to my team. And so he talked to the team, and then I saw him again in Cabo just a few weeks ago, and I asked him again. I said, hey, just curious if you had a chance to look at it, and what'd you think? And his comment was, we're still looking at it, although my feedback so far is it's not mainstream enough for my advisors, which is code for my advisors say to stay away from it because they don't know what it is, right? Which is, so it's interesting. Like the higher you get up there, the more that you're counting on those people around you. And that's fine. We say just bring them into the room with us, right? And 9 out of 10, they join us. And they're like, oh my gosh, that guy is the Bill Gates. I'm not the Bill Gates. It's talking about the tax attorney. I'm like the nurse that checks you in for the surgery, right? But it's this emotional attachment to your old way of doing things. And a lot of people have already written off that I'm just going to pay the tax, right? I have to give it all away to charity. Even the 1031 exchange 25 years ago, people didn't know about it. And then even 20 years ago or 15 or, now everyone knows about it. It's so mainstream. So it's trading the joy of being right for the joy of what's true. It's a quote by Ray Dalio in a book called Principles. And we all have these blind spots and these egos, and they sit on our shoulders like this, Jason. And one of them kind of blocks our eyes on this side. The other one, it's our pride. And these two things battle us constantly. And this is why we have no charge, no obligation due diligence. In fact, we'll review your deal. We'll do the x-ray. We'll give you side-by-side comparisons. We'll actually form the trust. We'll talk with your professionals, your M&A attorneys, on and on and on and on. And if you decide not to do it, no problem. You don't owe us anything, right? But do you come in the room and do you say, Mr. CPA, Mr. really smart tax people that I think I have the best, maybe you're not the Bill Gates, right? Can you sit down with the Bill Gates and see if this thing can work? And that's honestly the best answer I have. And when you do that, and if you don't feel it's true, and by the way, we have national law firms, big time celebrity just sold a $45 million deal in California. And he did a 3-month due diligence. He paid a big law firm $100,000 to do due diligence on this thing. And they gave him the green light. Another one was a former IRS attorney, agent who's a tax attorney. I have a client who's selling an $8 million business. Same thing, 3 months of due diligence. Like if you have enough time and an open mind, honestly, 99% of them will close and they'll give it the green light. It's just making sure that you don't let your tax people get off the hook. Say, no, I will pay you the $500 an hour to review this and tell me where it's wrong. Show me why it's wrong. Because if he's right, that's going to save me, and eliminate the estate tax and help me defer all of this. So that's really the biggest one. But besides that, you talk with our clients, references, talk with the banks, and then do the deal. Does that make sense, Jason?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a lesson for all of us, that status quo is our biggest enemy and competitor in the business world, because we know what we know and we're comfortable in that space. I was doing a coaching call earlier this morning with a bunch of people, and I was talking about that we got to get out of our comfort zone. And sometimes your CPA has provided a really great comfort zone and should be providing you a really, really very comfortable zone where you're not paying taxes that aren't owed. But just because he doesn't know about the DST or she doesn't know about the DST doesn't mean it doesn't exist and that it's not real. It is legit. I think that's the two words we got to take away from this. It's legit. You can work with Brett and his team to go through your deal, and they don't charge you anything to do the due diligence to take a look at it. Brett, I'm interested in, obviously I don't want to screw up my opportunity to buy this business, but I would be interested in at least pitching this to my sellers and say, hey, I don't know what their basis is. I assume they're going to hit that million thing based on what I know about it, but it would be
change their life, right? And they might throw an extra $25,000 off the deal, right? They'd be like, hey man, like if you want to throw me $50,000 off the deal, like great. And they're like, well, you help me save $300,000, like however you want to put that. And by the way, the creator of this is a CPA and tax attorney, right? He's a former Arthur Anderson attorney before the Enron days. He always says that. He's brilliant. He's both, right? And so, by the way, CPAs are not tax attorneys and tax attorneys are not CPAs. So they think with different hats. And it's the combination of those that changes the game. And this is what he provides. And anyway, so yeah, but no, happy to help down that deal, Jason, for sure.
All right, Brett. So the best way for people to get in touch with you is just go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. Are there other ways or anything else that you want to throw out there that people need to be aware of to get in touch with you?
Yeah, just check out my book. It's going to be coming out. I'm really, really excited. It's my whole story, and it's not just my story. We have some amazing people, and it's building a tax-deferred exit strategy. It's the proven playbook for unlocking your ideal wealth plan when selling assets of any kind for yourself or your clients. But we have some really smart people like Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank, like David Young. We have people like Michael Blanc, Neil Bawa, Joe Fairless, Tyler McBoom, Michelle Souther Tucker, Brian Burke. These are Dr. Buck Joffrey. Really, really, really smart people. They always say to get in the room with really smart people, and that's what I try to do with this book. And it's us talking about the deferred sales trust, about investments, about exit strategies, overcoming false beliefs of like, hey, it's too good to be true. All of that here. So look for that to drop on Amazon in the next 30 days or so.
Yeah. So go check out the book. And also when you reach out to Brett over at Capital Gains Tax Solutions about your deal, whether you do it today, tomorrow, next month, next year, just make sure you let them know that you heard about this through the Entrepreneur Master Series with the real Jason Duncan, because we like to partner together. We like to build a good network of good people. So I want to say thank you to Brett for being here. Thank you so much for sharing this valuable information. This will eventually be put out on my YouTube channel, which is at youtube.com/therealJasonDuncan. You'll be able to see this. And I know, Brett, you're probably going to take this and push it out to your people as well. But we're very grateful that you were here. I just want to tell everybody, and I'll put this in the chat right now, is that when you register for one of these Entrepreneur Master Series, like you've done for this one, you also are registered for all of our future EMSs. So all of the EMSs, we do these about once a month. The next one's coming up on April 19th, same time, 3:30 p.m. Central Time. And the topic for that one is going to be 4 steps to run your business with half the overhead and make more money. So there's going to be this guy's name is Jake Milner. He's the CEO of a company called Nurture Group here in Nashville. And he's going to be sharing what are the 4 things that you could do to run your business with lower overhead so that you can make more money. So make sure that you're here. You're already going to be pre-registered for it, but be on the lookout for it. Also, and finally, I will say this, that if you want to work less and make more, that's what I help people do every day. And I'm going to put this in the chat. You can go to exitwithoutexiting.com and you can use a special code that's in the chat room right now. I'm not even going to say it out loud because I only want the live people here in Zoom to get access to this. So you use that code that I gave you for $500 off the next cohort. I got started a cohort in April, on April the 14th. It's 8 weeks, 8 live coaching sessions with yours truly and up to 12 entrepreneurs that I'll show you how to work less and make more. I'll give you 4 core strategies to get yourself out of the center of your business so that you can go on to do other things. And eventually, when you sell it, when you get ready to have that capital event, then you want to reach out to Brett, and Brett's team can help you make sure that you don't give the government 1 penny more than what they're absolutely 100% entitled to. And you can take that money and go do better things with it. So Brett, thank you again so much for being here. Thanks to everybody for showing up. I'm the real Jason Duncan. That is Brett Swarts, and he's with Capital Gains Tax Solutions. It's been an honor to be with you today, and we'll see you next month.
Bye, everybody. Thanks, Jason.